Alex here from Blacksheep IT Consulting, and welcome to a year-end rally. We have devpops 24.12 out just in time so you can ruin your holiday vacation. And devpops 24.12 has one new feature for the demonstration, the purely educational demonstration, I have to say, of how to or how not to extend Siebel Web Tools. And with Siebel Web Tools, we know, of course, that there is the workflow editor, has been in Siebel Web Tools for a long time in the comfort of your browser. And let's take a look at a vanilla workflow that I just randomly selected here. It's the from the SAP connector times, long obsolete, but still a nice little workflow. And it's easy in that small workflow to read the flow from the diagram right here in the editor. That's absolutely not a problem to understand what's the first step. And they're even named correctly. So the first step, the second step, and so forth. So that's nothing new here. And I just show it for clarity. So this is the workflow editor. We do not change it. And what has changed in devpops 24.12 is you have those two preview buttons in the workflow list. And without further ado, let's press the first button and see. Okay, we get the same workflow, not in an editor, that's just read-only, but we get it visualized and straightened out, if you will. So you can zoom, and we can see the whole flow from top down. So it might be just easier to understand the flow, especially for large workflows, as we'll see further down in the demo. It's much easier to understand this. And this is the first type of previews. It just gives you the steps, so the start step, error step, stop step in that, business services, and the end step at the end, obviously. So let's close this. And let's try the Preview 2 button, which gives us a slightly more advanced visualization. So each business service here, or each major step like Siebel operation, business service, you name it, has now a full listing of all the input arguments and the output arguments. And so you can understand what goes in that business service method and what comes out of it. For example, the Siebel message here. And if you want to follow the Siebel message, well, you can employ the browser search. I haven't really invested the time to do a highlighting feature, but it's easy enough that the Siebel message is a vital part here. Just as an example, let's skip that for now. So you can see that the flow is still there, but with a lot more detail as to the input and output argument steps. So now let's take a look at a more complex workflow. So here I found one of the Siebel order management, and they are notoriously complex. So, and consider your most complex custom workflow with maybe 50 plus or 100 plus steps. So if you open that in the editor, just for the sake of understanding the flow from start to end, it might be a little bit challenging, to say the least, to do that. Of course, the editor is not here to give you the documentation of the flow. It's the editor. So here's where you do the work. But you want to document that. And so the idea is to use the preview. And let's go straight to the preview 2. And still get a fairly decent representation, thanks to the Mermaid JavaScript library, by the way. And this mermaid diagram represents the entire flow. And as we can do, we can zoom out and notice how it shows the top-down representation really nice. So you see what's the next step and what's the input and output. And as I keep scrolling down, you see that the decision steps are starting to make sense. There's a user interaction step here. There's a wait step. There's cancel. And of course, it takes a while to reach the end of that workflow because it's quite complex. But still, it's possible to understand that. And there's a sub-workflow. And guess what? When you click on the sub-workflow, yeah, that opens in a new window, by the way. Not a new window, sorry, that's a dialog. These dialogues are non-modal, so you can just maybe resize them if you want, and keep them on your screen. They would be inside the Siebel Web Tools tab, and that might not be what you want, so you can break out to a new window, and there's that little sub-workflow. Let's close that. Let's break out the big one in new window. And so that new window allows you to shift it to, well, another screen maybe. Just keep it there. And also, of course, to print it, right? So you can right-click and print, and yeah, you might have to work it out, but still it's something you can work out for to print it to PDF, for example, using the browser's native capabilities. So this is all a prototype, a devpops demo, so don't take for granted that it's fully functional, but it does what it says on the tin. It visualizes the workflows. And in the second part of this teaser video, I would like to go into what happens behind the scenes and why can you only use it with Siebel 23.6 and higher. So with Siebel 23.6, we gained the ability to query an entire hierarchy of an integration object, so to speak, that includes all the children using the getChildrenAll parameter in the URL. So you can see it here. And you can see that I'm using the workspace API, so it only works in development environments. And there's a test workspace I've given. So of course we pull it in WebTools from the current workspace. We want to query a workflow process, and this is the name of the workflow process. And we want to get all the children. So when I run this, we can see that there's the header, the workflow information, and then there's the workflow process properties, the workflow steps, and for each step, of course, the branch connectors. So you can see it's quite a lot. And so the entire workflow in JSON or as a JSON object has been returned by this call. And this is the underlying functionality to get all the data from the workflow using the Siebel inbound REST API in a clever way. But we do one call for the workflow, and we get all the children, and that is why that feature has been introduced in 23.6. So that is why you have to have Siebel 23.6 for this feature to actually work. The second part of the implementation is Mermaid. And Mermaid is an open source diagramming and charting tool. Look it up, mermaid.js.org. It's really cool, and you can you have lots of diagrams. So let's see one more time. Let's see maybe different workflow. So yeah, this one's a beast. And so see it one more time. This is the Mermaid flowchart diagram type from top down. So it arranges the input top down. And of course, we take the JSON representation of the Siebel workflow, and we pass it on through a JavaScript that generates the Mermaid code, which is kind of a markdown dialect code. And that is then displayed on the screen here. So it's pretty impressive. And still, that is a beast of a workflow, and you can print it on as a wallpaper if you want to. So yeah, with that, I hope you enjoy the devpops 24.12. It's out now on GitHub. Check the link in the description. Yeah, see you next time. Take care and bye-bye.